Welcome to episode 2 of our Understanding Unreal series. This is a character setup episode, so if you already have a character, input, mesh, animation, things like that, feel free to skip over this one, head to episode 3. If you want to understand what this episode is and you've missed it, check out the playlist in the description. We've got an intro video that will overview the objectives of the entire series and things that we'll accomplish. In this episode, we will be adding input events to the character to allow them to move. We will be adding a character mesh and animations that react to that input, and we'll be properly setting up a third-person camera so we can see what's going on. Let's hop into the project, and if you don't already have these classes made, check out the previous episode where we did that. To first set up character input and movement, we're actually going to want to go into the character controller. Let's go in here and remove what's already in the event graph and start adding our inputs. Let's first set up our mouse movement, which will be very simple. First, we're going to get the player pawn. And from that, add controller. We will need yaw and pitch. The yaw will be for the X, which is turn. And the lookup will be our pitch, which is Y. To handle our movement, we will also get our player pawn, and this time add movement input. And we'll need 2 of these here. We're also going to get control rotation and break the pin here. We just want the Z-axis, which is our kind of left to right, side to side, and this is going to give us our perfect forward and right value. From those vector points, we can determine the movement of the character. We'll make a rotator and control drag this pin down and get forward vector and get right vector. Connect this so. Connect the axis values to the scale values. And of course, the execution lines. Now I'm going to comment these 2 things out. Commenting your code is a very good practice because even if you do know how to read what it is and can figure out very quickly what's going on, it's also good to check show bubble when zoomed. So that way, at a distance, when things get really busy, you can just kind of, at a glance, see what's going on. And of course, it allows you to navigate your code much quicker. So we'll bookmarks, but we'll get to that in a different video. Finally, let's set up jump. We'll handle sprint and crouch in different episodes. First, we want to get player character, and then call jump, and stop jumping. Connect to press and release like so. And then we will comment this out as well. Control Shift S to save. And let's test our character now. We failed to compile, and let's take a look as to why. Let's open our character controller, and it took us straight to the error. It looks like I forgot to connect this to player pawn. And that's always a good reason to compile before hitting Control P. Even though hitting Control P, or excuse me, Alt P, when playing will compile everything for you, but you'll just, of course, get, why are we getting all of these errors here? Well, we'll still get nothing because we don't have our character set up properly. Let's go to our character and add a mesh and a camera here. First, I'm going to add the camera by clicking on our mesh and adding a spring arm. Attached to the spring arm, I'm going to add a camera. And let's go over to viewport here. That looks good. Let's hit Alt-P and see what we get now. I'm not totally sure what was wrong with the world instance, but I basically just opened up another level and then went back into the map that we were in, and now I'm not getting that black screen of death anymore. Now, I can see that I'm rotating around a center point, but I don't see exactly what I'm rotating around. WASD seems to work, but looking up and down doesn't do anything, just side to side. How's that? Let's hop into our character and go to our spring arm. Over here, we'll want to check use pawn control rotation to be true. That should allow us to actually move up and down as we would want and pivot around that actor. As you can see, it already has collision to run into the floor, so that way we're not clipping into the floor, which is good. Let's add our mesh. And rotate him down so that way everything looks proper. All right. Now, let's line this up so that way it's not just pointing at his feet. We could do a couple things. We could attach this to a bone if we wanted, like the spine. And when we play, we can see how that looks. And that looks pretty all right. Of course, using WASD doesn't really look how it should, but let's disconnect it from the spine and just move it up in a general location. Still looks fantastic and isn't affected by animations too much. But let's fix this, shall we? This sliding around, it's not really cutting it. To fix that, we need to do a couple things. First, we can search our class defaults for use yaw and disable use controller rotation yaw. And then we can also search for orient rotation to movement and check that to be true. It does require both of these to be switched from their defaults, and that will allow for WASD to dynamically allow the character to run around in the direction that they would like and that you're pointing, without the camera getting controlled by that. But of course, if I'm still just pressing and holding W and moving my camera around, same with any of these keys, it will control the character like that. Now, this is not always how a character wants to be controlled. We will want to set up an anim set so that way when they're controlled in a WASD front-facing fashion like this, like in, say, first person or third person, we will want that controller to actually face the way our character rather to face the way that our camera is facing at all times, like this. We will set up that switch between not only having a weapon equipped in first person and third person, but also the differences in those kind of control environments in first person and third person. But that will be future addressed. For now, I'm just going to set those back to how we want them to look for a nice third-person experience. The last thing we have to test is the jump, which works right out the box as it should. Now, we're kind of lucky with this because this is something that Unreal has just kind of figured out. Epic Games, they know that most characters need to jump, and if you don't need to, you just don't call it. But it's built into the character parent class. So if this was just a pawn, you wouldn't be able to get it. And that's why we can't get jump from our player pawn, but we can get jump from our player character. Now, technically, these both do very similar things, being that character does derive from the pawn class, but we will also be specifying these much closer. We'll actually be promoting our own variable to properly connect to the character class that we're controlling at the time. This is a very introductory episode, and so what's being done, of course, is not groundbreaking or new to many of you. It's just introductory for those who can skip over it, and that's why I've isolated this into an episode of its own. But please enjoy, and thank you very much for watching.